In the heart of Montana, she thought it was just another ranch lesson, but what the rancher did changed everything forever. This story will leave you speechless. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Tell us, where are you watching from? Let's get. The sun melted slowly into the golden fields of Montana, painting the wide horizon in shades of amber and rose. The Carter Ranch stretched as far as the eye could see, a sea of waving grass, wooden fences, and restless horses. Emily Dawson stood by the corral, her hands still trembling from the mistake she'd made earlier that morning. She had left the south gate open and 2 horses had wandered off into the lower pasture. It had taken the ranch hands nearly an hour to find them, and the silence that followed her apology had been heavier than any scolding. Luke Carter had said just one thing to her before turning away. "Meet me at the barn after supper." His voice was calm, deep and steady, the kind that carried authority without ever needing to shout. But those few words had echoed in Emily's mind all day long, each repetition filling her with dread. Luke Carter wasn't just any rancher. He was a man whose name carried weight across Montana, known for his discipline, his perfection, and his silence. When he spoke, people listened. And when he called you out, you learned. By the time the evening rolled in, the ranch was quiet. A warm orange glow spread over the barns, and the scent of fresh hay drifted through the cool air. Emily took a deep breath, brushed off her dusty jeans, and walked toward the old red barn. Every step made her heart pound harder. Maybe he was going to fire her. Maybe he'd decided she wasn't cut out for ranch life. She needed this job, not just for the money, but for something deeper, something she couldn't yet explain even to herself. When she pushed open the barn door, the hinges creaked softly. Inside, the dim light of a single lantern cast long shadows across the wooden beams. Luke stood near one of the stalls, tall and broad-shouldered, his hat tilted low. He looked like a figure carved from the land itself, rugged, quiet, and impossible to read. "You're late," he said, his voice calm but sharp enough to slice through the still air. "Sorry, Mr. Carter," she said quickly, keeping her eyes low. "Had to clean the tack room before I came." He didn't reply at first, only nodded slightly before turning his gaze back to the stall. "You know why I asked you here?" he asked after a pause. Emily swallowed hard. "Because I messed up," she said quietly. "Because I left the gate open." Luke's jaw flexed slightly, but his eyes softened. "That's part of it," he said. "But mostly I want you to understand something about this place. Every mistake here has a cost, not just in time, but in trust. Out here, trust is everything." His words sank deep, and Emily nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, sir." Luke turned, unlatched the stall gate, and stepped back. A young colt shifted nervously inside, its ears twitching. "This is Duke," Luke said. "He's green, doesn't trust easily. You're going to help me get him used to the lead." Emily's eyes widened. "Now?" she asked hesitantly. "Now," he said firmly. He handed her the lead rope, the coarse leather rough against her palms. The colt snorted, stomping its hooves as she approached. Emily whispered softly, trying to calm him, but the horse jerked back, pulling her slightly off balance. In a flash, Luke moved beside her, one hand steadying the rope, the other resting gently over hers. His grip was firm, grounding her instantly. "Easy," he said quietly. "He's not fighting you. He's testing you. Don't pull. Guide." Together they moved in rhythm, slow, patient steps until the colt finally relaxed. Emily exhaled a shaky breath, realizing how close he was standing. She could feel the heat radiating off him, the quiet power he carried without ever showing it. "See?" Luke murmured. "It's not about control. It's about patience." Emily nodded, her voice barely audible. "I understand." He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable, then turned away to hang the rope back on the wall. For a moment, the only sound was the soft rustle of hay. Emily looked down, unsure what to say, until Luke spoke again, his tone softer this time. "You've been carrying more than you let on." She blinked, startled. "What do you mean?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded letter, handing it to her. "This came in the mail this morning. Your name's on it. Confused, she took the envelope, her stomach tightening as she opened it. Her hands froze when she saw the letterhead. It was from a bank in Virginia. Her father's old debt notice transferred to her name. Her heart sank. She hadn't told anyone about that, not a single person on the ranch. "How did you get this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Luke's eyes stayed steady. "I look after the people who work here," he said simply. "You didn't come out west for adventure, did you, Emily? You came to run from something." She looked down, her voice cracking. "I didn't want anyone to know. My father passed, and the bank, they're taking what's left of our land." Her throat tightened. "I can't lose it. It's all I have left of him." Luke took the letter gently from her shaking hands, folded it again, and slipped it back into his pocket. "You won't lose it," he said. She looked up, confused. "What?" He met her gaze, calm and firm. "I bought it this morning. The land, the debt, all of it. It's yours again, free and clear." For a second, the world around her stopped. She stared at him, not sure she'd heard him right. "You... what?" she whispered. "You didn't have to do that." Luke tipped his hat slightly, his tone quiet but unwavering. "Didn't do it because I had to. Did it because your father once helped me when I had nothing." Emily felt her throat tighten as tears burned her eyes. She wanted to speak, to thank him, to ask why, but no words came out. Luke turned toward the door, his boots echoing softly on the wood. "You wanted a lesson," he said. "That's it. Out here you take care of your own. That's the only way people make it." And before she could respond, he stepped outside into the cool Montana night, leaving her standing alone in the golden glow of the barn lantern, holding on to the rope and the realization that she'd just witnessed something she would never forget. The unthinkable kindness of a man everyone thought had none. The following morning arrived with the quiet hum of ranch life already in motion. Trucks rolled across the dirt road, cattle lowed in the distance, and the crisp Montana air carried the smell of hay and earth. Emily woke early, her thoughts spinning from the night before. She had barely slept. Luke's words, and what he'd done, replayed in her mind over and over. He had bought her father's land, just like that, without asking, without reason. She didn't know whether to feel grateful, angry, or utterly confused. Nothing about it made sense, especially from a man like him. After breakfast, she watched from a distance as Luke directed the hands near the north field. He moved with quiet certainty, commanding attention without ever raising his voice. She had seen strong men before, but his strength was different. Not loud, not prideful. It was the kind that came from carrying more than most people ever could. Emily wanted to speak with him, to ask why he'd done something so big, but every time she tried to approach, her words stuck. The courage she used to ride horses with seemed to vanish around him. By noon, the sun burned high, and Emily finally couldn't take the silence anymore. She dusted her jeans, squared her shoulders, and marched toward the ranch office, a small wooden cabin near the main corral. Luke was inside, sorting through a stack of papers, hat resting on the desk beside him. He looked up when she entered, his expression calm, almost expectant. "Morning," he said simply. "Morning," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. She hesitated for a second before saying, "I need to talk to you." Luke leaned back in his chair, folding his arms. "Figured you would." She stepped closer, frustration and emotion mixing in her chest. "You shouldn't have done that," she said. "The land. You can't just buy someone's past and hand it back to them like a gift." Luke's eyes narrowed slightly, not with anger but with patience. "I didn't buy your past," he said quietly. "I kept a promise." She blinked, confused. "A promise?" He nodded slowly. "Your father, John Dawson. I worked alongside him years ago when I was starting out. He taught me everything I know about breaking horses, about trust. I owed him more than I ever paid back." Emily felt her heart twist at the mention of her father's name. "You knew him?" she whispered. Luke nodded again. "Better than most. He helped me when I was nothing but a kid trying to keep my family's ranch from falling apart. Wouldn't take a dime for it either. Said one day I'd understand what it means to give without expecting something in return. Guess I finally did." The room fell silent for a moment. the soft ticking of the wall clock filling the space. Emily's throat tightened as she whispered, "I don't know how to thank you." Luke gave a faint smile. "You don't owe me a thing," but Emily couldn't leave it at that. The words, the emotion, everything inside her demanded more. "You could have told me," she said, her voice trembling. "You let me think you were angry, that I was about to get fired." He looked down, then back at her, his tone softer. "You needed to see the truth of this place first. You can't teach someone responsibility with words. They have to feel it." Emily took a slow breath, her frustration melting into something else. Respect. Maybe even understanding. She realized then that Luke Carter wasn't a man who taught through lectures. He taught through living examples. That evening, the ranch quieted as the sun sank below the hills. The sky turned purple, the first stars blinking to life. Emily found herself walking toward the barn again, drawn there by habit, or maybe by something she couldn't name. She pushed open the door, the warm scent of hay and horses greeting her like an old memory. Luke was there, brushing down one of the mares, sleeves rolled up, quiet and focused. "You ever take a break?" she teased lightly. He glanced up, a faint smile in his eyes. "Horses don't care much for schedules." She stepped closer, her hands brushing along the edge of the stall. "I still don't understand how you knew," she said softly. "About my father?" "About me." Luke stopped brushing for a moment and looked at her. "Your father wrote me a letter before he passed," he said. "Told me you were thinking of coming west. Asked if I'd keep an eye on you if you ever did." Emily froze. He did?" Luke nodded. "Said you were stubborn like him. Guess he wasn't wrong." A small laugh escaped her lips, the first real one in days. "No," she said. "He wasn't wrong at all." The air in the barn grew quiet again, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that spoke louder than words. Steady, full, and strangely peaceful. Emily looked at him, the man everyone called cold, distant, unfeeling, and realized that maybe he wasn't any of those things. Maybe he'd just learned to protect the parts of himself that had been hurt before. "You didn't just give me back my land?" she said softly. "You gave me a second chance." Luke shook his head. "You earned it yourself. I just opened the gate." She smiled faintly. "That sounds like something my dad would have said." Luke placed the brush down and leaned against the stall, his eyes meeting hers beneath the lantern light. "He was a good man," he said quietly, "and I think he'd be proud of the woman standing in front of me right now." The words hit deeper than she expected. For a moment, Emily couldn't speak. She blinked quickly, forcing back the tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." Luke tipped his hat slightly, his voice steady as ever. "Just doing what's right, Emily. That's what your dad taught me." They stood there for a long while, two souls bound by a shared past and an unspoken understanding. Later that night, Emily stepped outside, the cold air brushing her face. Above her, the Montana sky stretched wide and endless, scattered with stars. She looked toward the open fields, where the horses moved like shadows in the moonlight. Something inside her had changed. The fear, the running, the uncertainty, all of it felt lighter now. Maybe because she finally understood what her father meant when he said life out west wasn't about what you lost, but about what you built after losing. And now, standing under that vast American sky, she felt ready to start again. Back in the barn, Luke watched her silhouette fade into the distance, his expression unreadable but peaceful. Some lessons he thought didn't need words, they just needed heart. And for the first time in years, the ranch felt a little less empty.